everyone, welcome. My name is Rachel Foy. I own Hillman Homes here in West Newton. We are a real estate firm who helps buyers, sellers, investors, and renters. And I'm really happy to be doing this podcast. And I'm really happy that my friend James Solimini is here from Guaranteed Rate. We talked a lot of good information today. I want to go back to a little bit of the fun stuff because people want to hear the details of how it was for you and for me. Now, for me, this is 25 plus years ago, but let's go in a little more detail about what it was like the first time you bought a property.
So the first time I closed Friday the 13th, December 2013.
Wow. So over 10 years ago.
Yeah,
okay.
Over 10 years ago. It was a two-family that I bought. I still own. And I was looking for a while. And I was, again, in the industry for a couple of years and kind of was looking all over the place. Knew I wanted to buy a multifamily first. I've always wanted to get into the multifamily investment, kind of build my own portfolio. So we were looking, and I mean, I dragged you around to all places, north and south of Boston.
We tried a few different, well, originally I think you wanted South Shore. We looked a little South Shore, but that's part of it, trying to figure out where you wanted to live, right? So we looked in a few different towns. That's true.
Yeah, a few different towns. And for me, I'm a South Shore person, right? South Shore versus
Boats.
North Shore.
Yeah.
It's a different ballgame. So I was looking for a multifamily, but for me, it was all numbers. It was numbers driven where, back then and still now, all like the kind of hot areas is like the Somerville market or Medford. And I ended up going to Everett because for me, kid from Braintree, walking around Somerville versus walking around Everett looks the exact same to me. It was all the numbers. So we looked at a lot of different properties, and we looked at ones that were lower priced, more distressed, ones that I didn't want to get into, ones that were high. We looked at a lot of different properties. But when it
that was a good point, though, that you were open to doing some updating. And that's also something that people need to think about.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, and renovation loans are huge right now because there's low inventory. So we had back then, that was 2013, there was much more inventory than we have now. So I was able to kind of be a little bit more selective and actually take my time, even though we still had to go over asking back then to get the property.
Right.
But now you're walking into a place and it's not going to be perfect. You have to walk into it with a vision to be able to make it your own. And that's what we can use renovation loans for, which we can talk about that later. But for my experience, it was, okay, found the property. And then I just looked to you like, okay, what do we do now? I want to do it. Let's do it. Let's make an offer.
Right.
Like, okay, so you did your thing and you told me what I needed to do. Even though I knew what had to happen as a loan officer, I was still looking to you for guidance because now I switched from working to this is my personal life, this is emotional. Now I need to I'm looking at everything but the numbers.
Well, you normally get an offer handed to you and you're just setting up all into your computer what the data is. Yep. Now we had to sit down and say, okay, what makes up a good offer?
Right. And I look at when I get the offer, I'm looking at it on my computer. I'm just saying, okay, here's the purchase price, down payment numbers, mortgage commitment, closing date. Great. And I start working on it. Yeah, there's such a road to get to that document. And that was the journey that I took with you and that every first time home buyer takes. So it was figuring out what I wanted to do, when I wanted to close, what terms we wanted to put in place, who we wanted to use. So, and that was my experience with you was just kind of like, okay, what's next? Even though I kind of knew what was next, but who do we have to call next? Okay, you have an inspector? Give me your inspector. I need to call him. I need to set this up. We got an offer accepted. Great. Now you have this kind of the roller coaster of emotions of high and low, and now all of a sudden you're spending money, and it's like the biggest check you're ever going to write in your life. Up until that point because you've never bought a house before. So going through that yourself really gives you more of an appreciation of the process to be able to have that empathy for these buyers as they're going through it and realizing it's not just a document on my screen. There's people behind this. There was a whole process to get there, and going through it myself with you was eye-opening. So, that's how we kind of have always approached it.
And I'm the same way. I mean, even when it's my own place, I get all emotional, even though I do this every single day. When it's your own place, you're like, oh my gosh, and up, down, up, down. So it definitely makes a difference.
And we've even had times where, you'll call me yelling at me and I'll call you yelling at you. And
I know.
It is what it is. But that's what happens. And that's the emotions of this crazy business that we're in, and that's why we work so well together.
Absolutely. I know. I bought my first house at 23, which as far as you know was like 5 years ago. And I remember I looked at 36 different homes. Yeah. I put an offer in on a place in Beacon Hill at the time. I thought it'd be really romantic to be in Beacon Hill. And I'm going to reference a movie from before you were born. It's called The Money Pit. Again, maybe 5 years ago, but yeah. That was all about Tom Hanks, I think, and he fell through the floor, and there was 60 amps of electrical for three units. So if someone put their blow dryer on, all your lights would go out. There was ants, there was termites, there was mice, the need roof, the stairwell it was awful. Mm-hmm. I had to back out of that. Then I was looking actually here in Newton, and literally the day before I was supposed to sign the purchase and sale, they just wanted to let us know that there was an underground oil tank. And they were going to be testing that next week, after the purchase and sale. And if it was leaking, we may or may not have a special assessment. I don't know why they were upset, but somehow that was not good for me. Like I could possibly have like a $300,000. I don't know how much it costs to fix an oil spill, but had to back out of that. And I didn't have a realtor. Eventually connected with a realtor. Now I have so much appreciation for being a realtor who actually said, "Why are you looking in Newton? Where do you want to live?" And she's the one who recommended West Roxbury at the time, which I didn't know anything about. And I didn't know about residential exemptions where you get tax breaks for living in the Boston metro area. And she showed me the perfect single family, no underground oil tank, no rats, no termites, no whatever. And I moved in this first home, but it was like this hideous process that if I had a team from the beginning, like we talked about, somebody could guide through it. And that's just my hope that I'm able to do that for other people. Exactly.
You have to learn so much about the process, and just having someone as your guiding light is the most important, and then a team around them. That's the most important part. And with so much information on social media and Google, whatever, you can get all of the pieces to it, but without understanding the process, it's impossible to put it together.
Right. And tying it all up together, because I know we're ending up on our time. When we bring back to this team and our first-time home buyers, where do you think for right now would be the best, step or the best next piece of advice for a first-time home buyer that's starting today? Here we are, 2024.
The most important thing that you can do is understand your numbers.
Yes.
Understand your numbers inside and out. You have to know your numbers. You have to know, here's how much we can possibly spend, pushing the limit. And it's always based on the two most important numbers. I have this conversation every day. The two most important numbers that you need to understand, even though we're going to go through everything in detail when we go through this process, you need to know, number one, how much is it going to cost me out of pocket to purchase this property? Soup to nuts, down payment, closing costs, everything. This is my number that I'm comfortable with. Do I have to figure out where it's coming from? Does there have to be gift monies involved? Whatever it is, but understand your out-of-pocket money at closing, number one. Number two, what's my payment moving forward? Those are the two easiest numbers for you to understand. Everything else you can not ignore, but it just all boils down to that. Understanding those numbers, and then from there, what that means in real life. You do the hypothetical scenario of, if I want to buy a house for $500,000 and put down X amount of dollars, these two numbers are here. Now translate that hypothetical to a real life property where you can say, okay, if I buy that house, these are what my numbers look like. So understanding your numbers inside and out, being comfortable in an uncomfortable market.
Right.
That's the number one thing you have to do.
And I think what's so important is everyone gets so hyper-focused on interest rates. The reality is the interest rates don't matter once you do that formula that you're talking about. If you know what your monthly number is and you feel comfortable spending that on a monthly basis, and actually be happy that you can be fixed with that number on a monthly basis, you've done all right. And then we just hope for the best that maybe someday, one day, the rates might drop or your situation changes or you have a chunk of money to go towards it. But people get hyper-focused on the interest rates instead of on the total end number.
Well, also the thing to understand too is especially in our area, these prices aren't coming down. I have clients that are still waiting from 5, 6, 7 years ago for prices to come down. They're not coming down. They're not coming down. They're only going to go up. And even when rates come down, the statistic is for every 1% that rates come down, you have 5 million new buyers that can now buy the average house in the country. So if we go from right now, rates are today it was about 7.5%, the average rate. If it goes down to 6.5%, now you have 5 million people that could come in and be your competition. Obviously, it's in the country. So if you can buy the house now, my advice is, if it's comfortable for you and you know you're going to buy, whether it's now or later, If you can do it now, do it as early as possible, because you know that's going to be the worst rate that you're going to get, because if and when rates come down, you already have your house. Now just refinance the amount you owe, and it's only going to get better from there.
What do we say? Marry the house, date the rate.
That's right. That's right. Yep.
Marry the house, date the rate.
Yep.
Yep, I think you're right on. Well, I thank you so much for being here today. Any last words of wisdom that you want to share with our wonderful world out here?
Not really. Get pre-approved.
Get pre-approved. Get a power bid.
Yeah.
Find your team and take the time to figure out the process. I will just add on, take the time to sit down with someone and understand the process from the beginning to end. So that way you're not scrambling. What's the next step? What's the next step? So I'll lead you every step of the way to say, okay, now's the time, get pre-approved. Great. Now we can figure out the rest as we go along.
Exactly. Step by step.
Step by step.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Happy to have you here. Thank you so much.